All right, guys, we are joined today with Jen Bladen. She is the advisor at Harvard Westlake School in California. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks.
Good. I'm so glad. Thank
Glad
you
to be here.
for joining us. We're excited to chat with you today. You have tons of experience on all sides of journalism, I think. So I know that advisors are going to be super excited to hear from you and hear all of your great advice and everything you have to share. So to get started, if you'll just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into teaching, how you got into advising, how long you've been doing it, and the publications that you advise.
That's a lot.
I know. Sorry. All
I'll
at
start at the
once.
beginning. Um, I so through a series of fortunate events, I wound up working at a magazine in San Diego in the 90s. I was still in college. Thank you very much. I'm old, but I'm not that old.
You're not that
Um,
old.
I was working at a magazine. I was fact checking, and it was really my first exposure to anything journalism oriented. And I worked my way from fact checking to layout. I learned PageMaker when that was still a thing. I learned Quark Express on the job. I learned editing on the job. I learned fact checking on the job.
Mhm.
Uh, and I was getting a degree in English. And through a series of unfortunate events, I resigned from that job in like a self-righteous early 20 somethings. I deserve a pay raise, and then didn't get it and then quit
And
and
then you're like,
didn't
well,
really think all
I
that
guess I
through.
gotta go.
So I wound up working at the mall with my sister. She was my boss. My younger sister was my boss at the mall.
My little sister
And
would love that.
right? She actually kind of did like the power a lot.
Of course.
So while I was working at the mall, it was at the Body Shop, the
Oh
skin and
yeah.
hair care, the one that's based in England. It's so I was working there and I was a trainer. Like my job was to train high school students how to work at the Body Shop. And one of my high school students said, "You should totally teach high school." And I thought, oh, wait, that's what I wanted to be when I was little.
Oh, cool.
So I got my teaching credential at Cal State San Marcos. And when I was doing my student teaching, this is where how I became a teacher and how I became a yearbook advisor meet. I was doing my student teaching and I walked in. We had like a schedule of classes we needed to observe.
Mhm.
And I walked into the yearbook room and I said, "Hi, I'm from the university and I'm here to observe your class." And the yearbook advisor, true to form, said, "One does not observe yearbook, one gets to work." And I was like, okay, they were on
Facts, though.
deadline.
I mean, you get it now.
And he pointed at his screen and he goes, "What's that?" And I said, "PageMaker." And he goes, "How do you know?" And I said, "I worked at a magazine." And he picked up the phone and he called the principal and he said, "I have my replacement for next year. What's your name?"
Whoa.
And
I've
so I
never had
got
like that.
interviewed.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I got interviewed and hired to replace him. And so began my career. That was in 1998.
Very cool.
So I've been doing yearbook since the 20th century.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then you know this, Katie, but I will share this that I taught for 2.5 years, 3 years because of the student teaching thing. I always round up
Yeah,
um
and that counts. That's work, man.
because I was at the same school too. It makes a
Yeah,
difference, right?
yeah, and you did the work. So, yeah.
I did. You do.
Mhm.
For any pre-service teachers watching this,
Yeah, I
it
actually didn't have
counts.
student teaching because I was alternatively certified, but I was a
Hmm.
long-term sub for a semester
Hmm.
beforehand and didn't get
Hmm.
paid that summer. So I count that because that was work that I was not paid well for. So,
Yes, absolutely. Um, so I got recruited actually to work for Taylor Publishing, which was the predecessor to Balfour. So I was a rep for 6 years in San Diego and learned a whole different set of yearbook things that
the
way,
different side of
right?
it.
Like a whole new glimpse into, oh, you meant deadlines.
Right, right.
Right? Like what you think in the classroom versus what's happening in the plant are very different things.
Right.
So that was a nice insight. And then I kind of let it be known to my friends and colleagues that I was ready to go back into the classroom. And Harvard Westlake School was hiring a yearbook advisor, and it just, the timing was perfect. So I left San Diego and moved to Los Angeles, which for anyone who is from San Diego knows is like joining the dark side.
Well, I feel like San Diego, and I know nothing about California, but I feel like San Diego is like beautiful, chill, great weather, and San Diego or Los Angeles is like crazy, like
Go, 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 go,
horrible
go, go.
traffic. Yeah. So totally change in pace, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I didn't know what traffic was until I got here.
Right.
But here I am. So, and
Great.
then I about the same time, I started, let's see. So my first yearbook camp was as an advisor. My second yearbook camp was as an instructor.
Nice.
So I hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And I taught at the yearbook workshop that used to be at Pepperdine University for I think more than 20 years.
It's fun. I've heard it's a fun one. I've never been or been to it, but I've heard it was a really fun one.
It was a really fun one. Yeah. It is dissolved now.
Yeah.
But it was a great time. At our peak, we had like 350 yearbook only. Like we didn't offer any other tracks, and we still had 350 students. So
how fun. I know.
It was great.
Yearbook workshop, I mean, I think that this is kind of a segue, but a lot of times, you know, when I was in school, we had yearbook workshop, and one summer my advisor wasn't able to go, and so we didn't go. And I think our book, like it showed, like having that time in the summer to bond with your staff and learn outside of the classroom and have that like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 days of dedicated yearbook time in the summer where you're not worried about anything else is invaluable. And so it's so sad when it like kind of stopped in COVID, and virtual is good, but it's just not the same. And so I'm so glad that yearbook workshops for the most part seem to be back. And I think the numbers are smaller, but you know, we'll work back up to those bigger ones like before. So yeah, it's just such a good, invaluable time to spend with your staff. So thank you so much for your service and teaching it for so long, because
of course
they're also very exhausting. So
they are. It's true. Yeah, they are. For sure. So and then the only other bit of bio I think is important is, well, there are a couple little things I think are very important, especially for first year advisors to be thinking about. But one is that I got my CJE and then my MJE and my master's degree kind of all at the same time. I did a master's program that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, but it was the University of Missouri, Columbia online journalism educator master's. And so it was a combined program between the ed school and the J school.
Oh, cool.
And I wouldn't trade that for the world. I made friends I still keep in contact with now, even though we were online.
Right.
And I got my MJE because of the projects I did in my master's. So it was perfect timing. It's also what taught me that some of my best writing happens at 2 a.m.
I know. And sometimes you get mad at your students because you're like, do something in class, stop sitting there. But then you get it. Like as a creative person, like you're like, okay, this might not be the environment where that happens. That's okay. Right. But don't sit there and do nothing either. Like do something.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's so
well,
true.
Show me a yearbook advisor who can sit and do nothing, and I'll show you somebody who won't be a yearbook advisor for very long.
Yeah. If you're comfortable like chilling, I'm jealous of you. But yeah, I have 100,000 things going on at any given time. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me
In
about,
fact, I'm watching my phone as we speak. Like, you know that,
just in
right?
case.
And
Yeah.
I know yeah, exactly.
You have to be
Exactly.
aware of all these things.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about your position now at Harvard Westlake. What classes do you teach and what publications do you advise?
Yeah. So it's the first year of a new era.
Oh, Taylor Swift will
Um,
be proud.
yeah, it's either I'm gonna be walking around going like this a lot,
Oh,
or I'm gonna be walking around with my head held high. I'll probably be walking around with my head held high, no matter what. But
right. That's what we like.
so here's what had happened was we um through a series of fortunate events wound up for the first time in the history of Harvard Westlake School, which was Harvard and Westlake merged in 1991. So we have a broadcast teacher, uh, a live stream specialist, a newspaper teacher, and myself. So we're fully staffed for the first time. We've always been somebody's part-time or somebody's uh, another department's teacher borrowed. Like all of us are dedicated to the program. So as department chair last year, I put forward a plan to, first of all, converge, which is something that Harvard Westlake is way behind on. So many of the advisors that you and I have had the privilege of working with and talking to have had converge programs for a really long time, and we were just really behind at Harvard Westlake.
Yeah, every other interview that I've had so far in this series is either working towards or already has a converged media program on some level. Maybe not fully, but on some level they're working together.
Yep. And that was the stance I took, right? That one, we're sending students off to college and internships and jobs from Harvard Westlake Media that weren't getting the training that they actually needed. And two, that we were, one of the last schools to do this. So we are converged this year.
Great.
Our brand name is Harvard Westlake Media. A lot of people ask me to call it student media, and we have a film festival at Harvard Westlake. We have a playwrights festival at Harvard Westlake, and not one of them has the word student in them. And so I really felt very strongly that we needed to be Harvard Westlake Media and not student media. So
why is that? Did you feel like it diminished the work, like it was already going to be seen as lesser because it was student?
Well, and that what media would be coming out of Harvard Westlake if it weren't student media?
Right. Yeah. It's like we're done.
It's a school.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I felt like it was superfluous and also diminishing in some way. Right.
Right.
Like it's like putting the word amateur on Olympics. Right. When they used to be that way. It doesn't make any sense. It's the Olympics. You're the best. Go be the best. Right. So yeah, we're students. We didn't need to be told that we were students.
Right.
So it's happening.
Cool. No, I think you'll have a head held high. Don't be shy about that. I think that's the way to go. And even though it's a change and it's different, like that is the way of the real, workforce, and that's what we're preparing our students for. So it makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So we are when we meet in, this is the section you're enrolled in. This is not the yearbook section. This is not the newspaper section you're in. You meet when you're enrolled. And so, it's only the second week of school and we're still doing it. So that's a good thing. I will say that, so we have 99 students at the upper school.
In the program, not at the school, like in the program.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. No, that's
an important distinction.
Yep. Sometimes private schools are really tiny, so you never know.
Yep. We have 99 media students out of, I think the upper school is like close to 900.
Okay.
So what is that? Is that 10%?
That's a good
the math teacher asked.
No, I'm not a math teacher, but I think that's right. My husband.
That's a lot. That's a lot of kids. I know,
But yeah,
right?
that's a lot, especially for a school of that size. That's a big percentage. So it must be very popular and well received content, I would think.
Well, we hope we keep calling them pioneers, right? Like they're
Yeah,
taking a
yeah,
pretty big chance on us. So,
yeah.
um,
And
and then
sometimes
at
you have
the
good enrollment and then the kids fall off. Like sometimes it doesn't stay that strong, which is, I think, important for advisors to recognize too. Like, don't
I
feel like that's a
absolutely
failure.
agree.
Like, that's normal.
A huge part of our adult team is we have an athletics director who is he's like the communications guy for the athletics office.
Mm-hmm.
And he has essentially been coaching us in, what would serve their department. Our sports sections have not been our most well reported in yearbook and newspaper. Our broadcast and live stream are excellent at sports. And
Mm.
so that's kind of one of the reasons why his name is Jason Kelly. That's why Coach Kelly has been coaching the print side of the world, is because he sees how well the broadcast side
Yeah.
is going. And one of the things he coaches us on is that anytime a team gets a new head coach, you lose players
Mm-hmm.
and you have to build that team back up. And he said that may very well happen in our case as well.
Right.
And we've had a couple of drops and they're always like, oh, my schedule. But, I
Yeah.
think they're being polite that they're just
Which
not
is,
on
it's
board.
okay if you're not in it to win it and do the work and you're not loving it, then go find something else you do love. So I think
Yes,
that's totally fine because
exactly.
they're going to end up being kids
Exactly.
that
And then
don't do
send us
anything
photos of
anyway.
whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that your coach though is kind of almost in on the convergent media too. It's like that teamwork is what's going to really like translate to better content and then less conflicts too, because so many advisors, you know, this is my YouTube channel, so I can say whatever I want, but piss off their coaches because
Yeah,
they don't know the sport. And so they're just doing it fun,
exactly.
and the coverage is not good because they don't know what they're doing really in relation to athletics. So
Yeah.
that's so good that you have that partnership.
And I don't know if it's you who posted this, but somebody posted this time last year a video of a coach with standing in front of a yearbook staff with a big projector, and they were teaching a sport on screen. And I love that. I think that the whole yearbook staff should know how you score in lacrosse and
Yeah.
what is offsides in soccer.
Right.
And you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
It
Like,
wasn't me, but I remember someone posting that, and that's such a good idea. Like, get the AD or a coach on every team to come and do a little workshop, or even make a quick video explaining where to
yes.
stand to not get tackled, like
Or we
that
can
stuff.
make that video for them,
Yeah.
right? So it's like a partnership again, right? I wanted to say this when you said that a second ago, and I don't want to forget. When I first started teaching yearbook, a lot of people gave me the advice, team up with the photography teacher. And that's probably good advice. The advice I would edit that to is team up with the athletics office,
Yeah.
team up with the ADs,
Mm-hmm.
because your athletic directors have access to information that your students need.
Right.
And so the more that we can partner with them, the better off. And I'm not saying sports is the most important section. I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
but I am saying that for us, it's a third. So the middle school, each of them is in like 1,000 if you round off. The
Mm-hmm.
middle school's almost 1,000 kids, not really. The upper school's almost 1,000 kids. The athletics department is more than 1,000 kids.
Right. There's so
And
many.
so
Yeah.
that's who you want to be
Yeah. And I
partnered
mean,
with.
that goes for the other directors of departments too, like the English
Yes.
department head, like get to know those people. But the athletic
Performing
director,
arts.
like that trickles down to all the coaches, and those coaches are
Yeah.
the ones giving you the group pictures and the
Yeah.
names and all of that. So that's definitely someone to bring a cupcake to on the first day of school.
Absolutely.
Be friends.
Absolutely.
And the front office person, our front office person,
Yes.
everything. And
Yes. The
so
registrar.
yeah, people to have in your back pocket. So
Yeah.
that's great advice. Um,
Yeah.
well, we're getting into advice before we even got started here. So that's so on brand though. Real quick before we move on though, you mentioned that Harvard and Westlake combined in 1991, I think you said. It's not Harvard, Boston, Harvard,
That's a
right? So
great
clarify
question.
that
Yeah.
because I know people will
So
probably wonder.
that's a great question. The Harvard School for Boys was a Los Angeles institution for 100 years. And so more than 100 years ago, the founder of the Harvard School for Boys in Los Angeles reached out to the university, which was then a college, and said, would you be cool if we used your name? We really admire you. And Harvard said, sure, no problem. So we are
Don't think
not
that's
related to
today, but
exactly. Yeah, I think they would probably charge us an arm and a leg and
probably so.
or not allow it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Westlake was the girls' school.
Yeah, and most people think that it's in Westlake, California or Westlake Village. It's neither. It's like there was a tiny little pond in like Beverly Hills 100 years ago, and it was named for that tiny little pond way back then. So,
Gotcha.
so it was the Westlake School for Girls and the Harvard School for Boys became co-ed in 1991.
Gotcha. Okay. I just knew people were going to ask that. So I was like, well, let's just
Yeah,
clarify because it's on the other side of the country. So I think it's
yeah.
good to double check because I think it's a pretty confusing name if you're not aware of.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. It always makes me think of Ransom Everglades. Do you know that school in Florida?
No.
So there's a school in Florida called Ransom Everglades, and I want to hear their story. Like, how did
Yeah,
you get
for sure.
Ransom, and why are you? They're not actually in the Everglades, I
They're
think.
not?
And so, yeah.
Oh man, that is funny. Yeah, you're gonna have to go look them up and figure out the
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, the name I think is cool because sometimes that plays into the history of your school and anniversary books and stuff like that. It's good that advisors know the history of your school because it can play in different ways. So
Absolutely.
okay, so you are in charge of just yearbook though, right? Oh, what else do you do? Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Yes. What else? Tell us all the things.
I am now the director of HW Media. So
Okay.
I have no idea if that has any meaning. I just think it sounds really cool. I did not come up with it. One of my bosses did. So I'm super excited to be the director of anything. So I advise the yearbook. I advise the middle school news magazine and its website.
Okay.
I advise the middle school lit mag. I advise the upper school humor mag.
Oh, cool.
I advise I helped, we did, so we have a world languages magazine at the upper school called Babel, as in the Tower of.
Yeah.
Not as in the
Right.
right. And it's, we did a cookbook 2 years ago, and I advised that.
So all the little
but
questions that might pop up will fall on you too.
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
Sounds
Yes.
good. So how do you like manage it all? Like how would you just define your like staff
I
structure?
have this awesome planner.
Ah, really? Where'd you get it? I have like 17 right here. Do you see them?
Exactly. But literally my planner this year, I haven't had time to breathe and much less sit down and like do my planner. I have a date with my yearbook. I'm sorry, my teacher friends. We're all going to do our planners at once.
A planner
next
party.
week. So,
I love it. I used to have those with my students. I was like, everyone get it out. Get out your stickers and your washi tape.
Yep.
We're planner partying right now.
Exactly that. That's what we did it last fall, and it was so fun and
That's
so
fun.
important.
Yeah.
But that's actually really a part of it. The other thing I do is I color code everything. So Harvard, the Harvard School for Boys was in Studio City, and the Westlake School for Girls was on the other side of the Santa Monica Mountains. So every day since 2006, minus my 5-year sabbatical, I have commuted up and over the Santa Monica Mountains.
Oh, wow. So it's 2 campuses still.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. I thought maybe they converged into, one place. Wow, that's insane. So every day you make that commute. How far, like for people that aren't familiar with LA, like how far of a drive?
It's 7 miles and it's about 25 or 30 minutes.
Wow. Okay. So how do you
So
stay.
my point was,
Yeah, like how do you do that?
middle school has a color, upper school has a color. When you look at my Outlook, people look at my Outlook and they go, what
I can't look at
what
it.
am I looking at? But it really helps me to keep track of where I am and who I am.
Yeah.
Um, one of the one of the things that has been true until this year is that I tried my not me, the school and the scheduler and my the head of upper school and the head of middle school, we all worked really hard to make it so that my mornings would be at the middle school and my afternoons would be at the upper school. And that just didn't happen this year because of some changes in our calendar and our schedule and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So that actually was making it very uncomplicated. Like in hindsight, that was the easy part. So
Right.
this year it's more of a team teacher situation. So if I'm at the middle school, then the chronicle teacher, the yearbook, I'm yearbook, the newspaper advisor, his name is Billy Montgomery. So he and I told the students, he and I are Clark Kent and Superman. You'll never see us in the same place at the same time.
Right. But you can help each
I'm
other.
Superman, he's Clark Kent.
Absolutely, of course. Okay, so how do you structure your staff then? So is it's a class at the school that they enroll in, right? So how would you say that you like what would in a non-pedagogical way, like how would you describe your teaching style then in getting the kids to create these publications?
It's a visual.
There you go. Hands off. I love that. I love that.
It's not my job. I tell them all the time. I give them very strong opinions and I say, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that I love about the community where I work is that in general, every program is student run.
That's great.
And I hope that's true for most high schools, right? Like I
Yeah.
want that to be the case for
Yeah.
most high schools.
That's their playground to learn. I mean, that's what I feel like, but I feel like it's
Yeah.
probably not the case though across the board.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So I try to fashion my non-pedagogical part of my job around coaching, that like if they need me, I'll jump in and give them advice, but if they don't need me, I'm just going to cheer them on.
Mhm.
So and most of the time they don't need me.
Right.
What I think is really funny is though that every time I have said, is that really the best use of our, and then whatever it is, they go, oh, you mean we can't afford it?
Like, no,
Can I
I'm
say that?
saying be a good steward of what we can't afford. Yeah.
Right? They think I don't know if that's like the function of being a teenager in the worst inflation we've seen in a long
I mean,
time.
facts, let's be honest.
Right? But every time I say, let's rethink that idea, they go, oh, you mean we can't pay for it? Okay. I
Like,
think that's funny.
not what I said. That is funny. How interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for you to be hands off, do you spend some time like at the beginning of the year, like boot camp, sort of like teaching them how to
Yeah.
do all the things, or do your editors
Yeah.
do that? Or how do you like
Yes, and
know how to do it?
yeah. So it is truly a 5-year program. So starting in 8th grade, students can take the prereq. It's not J1, it's actually media literacy.
Oh, cool.
Because we want them to see what the impact of their work will be before they even begin it.
Yeah.
So they take a social media focused age of the internet focused media literacy course in 8th or 9th grade, and then they can join either yearbook, newspaper, or broadcast, but now it's HW media, right? And the sophomore class and the freshman class, so the 9th graders are at the middle school. So which I love that we keep our 9th graders young,
Yeah.
and that we give them leadership opportunities, right? Because their freshman year is so fraught. that here's a place where you can excel in ninth grade instead of just being afraid of everything all the time.
Right. Yeah, I do like that.
Right. So in the ninth grade, in eighth grade and ninth grade, they take introduction to HW media, and it's really a survey course. So we did a mini lesson yesterday on the difference between public relations and journalism. Right? Because we were signing up for beats, and part of your beat assignment is to promote the beat that you're working, like to help them build out a public relations channel. And so that is a PR function, but then to report on what's new in that department is a journalism function. And that's what I just described is a communications major in college, right? Like you have to learn what those differences are, and you get to specialize eventually, but you don't get to do that in 8th and 9th grade.
Right. You got to learn the basics and then you can specialize. Yeah,
exactly. So and then the sophomore class is also set up as a survey, and they all have upper school beats. And the juniors and the seniors are very much, especially because this is the first year of our converged situation, they're very much specialized. But like I was looking at the ladder. Say it again.
They're the producers, like they're the ones producing.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah. I was looking at the ladder yesterday, and there was a name on it, and I said, "Isn't that the editor-in-chief of the newspaper?" And she signed up to do a spread. Ooh. And I'm like, more power. Let's do it.
Media 101. Yeah.
Right?
That's great. Right?
I hope she ends up having time to do it, because I know that being editor-in-chief of the school newspaper is a big job. But we asked her about it, and she's like, yeah, they challenged me. They said, you can't design a yearbook spread. And she said, put me on the ladder.
There you go. I love that attitude.
Yeah. We are also super lucky that our editors this year all really like each other. So that helps a lot.
Yeah, that can be a challenge, especially as you create a converged media program. I know when I first started, it was very separate, and it was like this big fight about who I love more. And I was like, oh, like literally I did yearbook in high school, but that doesn't mean that I love yearbook more, whatever. And so it was just this huge struggle, which is why I combined them, not even thinking about like the future and stuff like that, because it was several years ago. And that first year, that was tough getting those editors to like each other. So that's huge, I think, in getting it to work.
Well, and okay, so let's go back to advice. I feel like we're all over the place, and I hope that's okay. Yeah. One of the most significant pieces of advice I got when I first started teaching yearbook was from a friend who had done it for a long time, but had also not done it for a few years. And he said, you must take them on retreat. And I was like, I'm a first year teacher. I'm not taking them camping. And he's like, don't take them camping, take them bowling. Yeah. But every year that I've done something social with them has been a significantly easier year than a year that I skip it. And so, yeah.
Almost more so than the content. Like the content will work itself out. Like they will learn that. But spending that time in the beginning of the year is not a waste. Like that is so essential.
Agreed. So we took 40 converged kids to Big Bear Lake in the mountains here in LA for one night, 2 days, with high ropes, canoeing, the whole 9 yards. And so funny, one of my students, she knows she's my favorite.
Oh yeah.
It's okay to have favorites.
That they are not supposed to know.
It's okay to have favorites. You cannot tell them.
Right.
But one of my students, she was like, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? And I'm like, you are the golden child. You're supposed to be backing
good attitude.
Right? She's like, the food is awful. The beds are awful. The canoe is awful. Right. And then we got back to school, and she was like, that's the best thing we ever did.
I told you so. Come on. Yeah, I know that it's hard. I know a lot of the new advisors are very scared to take kids on trips, to travel out of state on airplanes, to plan their own kind of workshop. But like, I love the idea, like take them bowling, take them to paint
Yep.
pottery. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but getting
Nope.
them outside the classroom, I think, is really important. We used to do journalism and jammies where we'd go to a movie theater in our jammies
So
and blankets. And I was like a Tuesday night. There's no one at the movie theater anyway, so they let us like rent out the whole thing for cheap, and that's just so important to get them to bond, I think. So
yes.
yeah, and you can
Yeah.
work your way up to doing a whole camping retreat. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I want you to know I've been planning it since 1998.
Yeah,
So,
it's been a while.
right?
Yeah, that's
Let
awesome.
yours be less than 25 years in the making.
Funny. Okay, so a couple more questions. With this, you know, either converged media or maybe how you've done things in the past, what are some things that you would say are the best when it comes to how to evaluate your students' work in terms of getting it published, but also actually grading them because it is a class? That's probably the number one question that I get asked.
I absolutely get it. Yes. And if you ask 100
They're all
advisors, so okay, those are two different questions, right? So getting it public, okay, and yet they're the same answer. Okay, so when I first started at Harvard Westlake, my department chair was the Chronicle advisor. Her name is Kathleen Newmeyer, and she was the Chronicle advisor from the merger until she retired in 2015. And she used to say that if it got printed in the Chronicle, it was A work.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of the time leading up to the printing of the Chronicle was getting it from your first draft to an A. And so I very much adopted that for yearbook, that by the time it makes it, if not to the page we submit, definitely the page we proof.
Mm-hmm.
We are very dependent on proofs in my program, and that's because I'm very dependent.
A proof, a hard copy proof, whether I print it myself or the publisher sends it to me. I prefer the publisher because then I get the colors to be right, but I need it printed. Yeah.
Me too. Me too. So, so my point, I guess, is that a collaborative A is still an A, right? That maybe you're the sophomore who drafted the page. As long as you see what goes into getting it ready and you are participating in that process, you're still earning that A, as far as I'm concerned. Harvard Westlake went through a big grading for equity growth spurt last year. And like many schools, I probably shouldn't say grading for equity. That's like an actual program. We were making choices about grading more equitably, right? And through the process of thinking about how we grade equitably, people who have these very points oriented, 10% of your grade is this and 30% of your grade is that, they were looking at, oh, the final product is really the final grade. And all of this messiness that goes into getting to the grade should be learning, right, and not grades, right? That's what actual equitable grading looks like. And that's how I've always graded. Yeah. So I think that looking at it as project-based learning, looking at it as a finished product gets a grade, all the messiness gets a thumbs up, keep going. That is very woo-woo for a lot of people. Like that is way out there.
As a teacher, you want that rubric with the point system and it's cut and dry, because then you also have the justification to say, hey, you didn't make the mark. maybe you shouldn't join us next year. And when you give everyone an A because they did get published, it's really hard to justify that to a parent, especially. And I think there's just such a difference in like teaching versus advising, where the grading is just totally different.
And I hear you. And I do have a rubric. It is a holistic rubric. So every 6 weeks, my students take a look at the rubric and they self-assess and they say, I have earned it. If they use the word deserve, I automatically drop them a letter grade.
They didn't earn it.
Yeah. So I've earned an A, and then they'll cite the things in the rubric that they've done to actually have earned that A. And the citation is, I worked on the homecoming spread, page 18. You know what I mean? Like their citations need to be, show me the photo you took, show me the, So, I do have a rubric. I just don't have a grade book. I have a collection of essays, which is also, I mean, a lot of us are in journalism because we don't want to read essays. We want to read journalism. So I get it. But yeah, that's how I do it. I know it's not for everybody, but if it is for you, reach out to me.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great answer because I mean, like you said, every advisor is going to have a different answer. And I think that's why it's a hard question to answer too, is because every program, every requirement for a school, a district, a state, is different. And so it's so hard to give there is no one size fits all answer for it. And so I think as long as you have a system that is working for you in a way that isn't adding more work to your plate in order to evaluate them, like the overall goal is get things published and printed. And the grading, I think it sounds so counterintuitive, and I'm not sure an AP or a principal would like to hear this, but is secondary to that goal.
Oh, absolutely.
Publication out. And so
absolutely,
it's different than
no parent wants to hear that. No kid wants to hear that.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, in terms of my goals for my classroom as a publications advisor, especially during deadline, I'm not putting grades in the grade book. Like that comes after the deadline's passed, Yeah. So that's definitely a shift.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I will also say that part of the new converged situation is that I can't ask these other teachers to grade the way I grade. And so we're kind of moving toward, it is a process, we're moving towards standards-based grading. So we have 7 standards for the department. Multiple sources is a standard. Verified information is a standard, fact-checked is a standard. Those are the only 2 that I can remember right this second. But what their grades will be based on going forward will be much more pointing to those standards than to my rubric is more mission-based. And this is definitely more demonstrable standards of the classroom. And what's cool is because we are a 5-year program, 8 through 12, they will know those standards. Like I was talking to my department supervisor yesterday, and I was saying that by the end of the quarter, I want my students to be able to tell you all 7 standards. I can't yet, but it's not the end of the quarter.
That's okay. You still have time.
I'll give them to you for the show notes if you want them.
Yeah, if you would, that's great. Anything you're willing to share, I will definitely link it down.
Always.
There. So, okay, so that's an interesting, I was going to ask another question, but I want to talk about this first, is standards-based grading, I think is, for lack of a better term, trendy. Like, I think that there are a lot of schools that are.
I agree. Yeah.
And so I don't think it's a trend that's going to fade away. I think it is kind of here to stay for at least for a while. So in a journalism classroom, I think it's really easy to do standards-based grading. Like it's easy to evaluate, is this work product reaching these particular standards? So from that perspective, I think it's fairly easy to implement. But what does that look like on a practical level? Like, does each assignment evaluate it against those standards, or is it in the grade book you have the standards and then you evaluate for the grading period? Like just to give a teacher an example of how you would implement that, even though you don't
Yeah.
do the process.
Yeah. So I have a teacher coach. I've been teaching since forever, and I have a coach. And she's an employee of the school. It's not like I hired a coach.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. You're
Yeah.
always learning. Like,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And so she is doing standards-based grading in her English classroom. And so her standards are punctuation, capitalization, and complete thought and stuff like that, right? Her standards are very, very different. And she evaluates per assignment.
mm-hmm.
So like if you turned in she teaches 7th grade, right? So if you turn in a paragraph, your paragraph would be compared against these standards. And honestly, again, it goes back to you have to self-assess first.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a 7th grader and you can't tell if you punctuated it properly, you're not actually meeting the standard. Right. So you have to start with, let's assess this. I'll assess it. You assess it. Then we look at what they do. And then where they meet up. My intention this year, we'll see how this goes. My intention this year is to assess standards per unit in the survey courses.
Okay.
So if the unit is on headlines, then we'll look at, are your headlines for the projects you did for this unit meeting the 7 standards? That's probably gonna fall apart pretty quickly.
Hey, that's okay. Like you said, it's a process and it's an evolution that, as you implement, things will change. But I think that that's really helpful because I know when I was teaching, standards-based grading was a buzzword. It still kind of is. And I was like, honestly, I don't even know what that means. And I don't even know about it. So it's getting chucked out of my brain. But I think districts are starting to require it and stuff like that. And so JEA has some really great standards when it comes to journalism as a whole. And I think it might be helpful from Organized Advisor to like come up with some additional resources to help with that. So that will probably be on the list of things. But I think it's helpful to hear from you, like as you're implementing it, any feedback you have along the way, or things that are going well or not going well. So maybe we'll do a little follow-up interview later on in the year.
For sure. Absolutely.
How it goes. Yeah. I think that's super helpful. Okay, so you've been doing this for a long time. You've been on the rep side of things, on the teacher side of things, multiple schools, different structures. You've kind of
public, private.
Yeah, you've seen it all, done it all. How do you prevent burnout? Like if we're talking to new advisors, typically right now we're seeing they stay 2 or 3 years, maybe we can push it to 5 or 6, and they leave. And they're not leaving because they don't like the job. They're leaving because they're overwhelmed, they're burnt out, they don't have the resources or the support that they need. That's one big reason Organized Advisor exists. But on a personal level, like how do you manage it all?
Yeah. I have like 8 things I want to say.
I know.
And they're all trying to come out simultaneously. But that's actually part of the answer, is that my ADHD brain loves the stay busy all the time. I do think that there are parts of this job, if your personality is that you are insanely organized, then that's actually like lean into that. If your personality is that you like to stay busy, lean into that. If your personality is that you like to delegate, lean into. There are people who hate to delegate. I love to delegate, right? I love it. So I would say, this is when I teach leadership, which is a huge part of what I have taught in summer programs, especially, right? Like, sure, I'll teach your InDesign classes, but can I also please teach leadership, right?
Yeah. And I would say that's kind of your claim to fame, is like, you're really good at teaching leadership.
Oh, Thank you. And I take it very seriously.
Yeah.
Like maybe a little too seriously.
No, no such
But
thing.
but what I teach students is that you have to know what your skill set is to lead, right? And teaching is leadership and leadership is teaching, right? I all day, every day, I'll swear by that. So if you know about yourself, one of the things that I experimented with for a little while with teenagers was talking about love languages, and that that at least when I was trying it, they were not ready for that.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I feel like
I think
that's
it's
very
so
helpful
much a
in
part of
other
the culture.
relationships. Yeah.
Exactly. I think exactly. Yeah. I think I could probably try it again now. I think I was a little too early,
You're ahead of the
but
game. Yeah. Mental health
yeah,
goes a long way with it being not like stigmatized to talk about that kind of stuff. So,
right. I agree. And also it's like if you say, what is it? Words of affirmation or whatever, that's something they've heard now.
right.
Before I was teaching the concept as well as asking what are your love languages.
Right.
Does
Right.
that make sense? So all of this is to say that if you know what your love language is and your love language is words of affirmation, then lean into that. Like have a feedback form that you give your students every Friday and they have to tell you how you're doing, right? Like find out what feeds you, and this is not to say be friends with your students, right? That's
Right.
a very distinct difference.
Yeah.
That asking your students for feedback won't always be positive, let's be clear.
Right. Yeah.
But you will get words of affirmation mixed in with the feedback,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and you're not doing it for the selfish feeding of your love language. You're doing it to truly give them what they need.
Exactly.
And you're doing it in a system that aligns with your love language because that's your
exactly. That's your yes. Thank you for helping me make my point.
No,
That was exactly what I was trying to say.
it.
Yes. And so again, if what you need to not burn out is organization, lean into that. Like build cubbies in your classroom, color code everything, like do the things that will keep you from burning out. And there's micro burnout and macro burnout, right? There's the end of the day, I'm spent, which is okay. You're supposed to be spent by the end of the day. What you're not supposed to be is spent the next morning.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
You
what
should
are
be
the
able to
things?
refresh and recharge and be excited to go back. And not every day, not to say that like if you're not feeling that way that something's wrong, but that's the norm. Like that's the
Put pieces together. Exactly. Yeah. Put pieces in place to help you get to that place where you walk in the next morning ready to roll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Like one of my things oh Lord, we've come to the point of the program where I'm going to overshare.
I love it.
But like one of my things is comfort objects. Like this is my comfort object, right? I need my phone or I need my whatever fidget spinner or
I have
whatever.
my little conquer ring. I like fidget with it.
Exactly.
It's an ADHD thing to be honest, but it also is a comfort that I have something to fidget with because I can focus on something else.
Exactly. And so knowing that I need a thing, I like always, even if it's 93 degrees outside, I have a sweatshirt in my classroom because I'll like move it onto my lap if I need like a little weighted blanket in the middle of the day or whatever. I went through a period of time where I used to sing Christmas carols to get through a stressful layout.
I love that.
I've kind of outgrown that, but yeah, whatever it is that you need, the kids will think it's quirky and they'll either make fun of you to your face, which is fun,
it's
or
loving.
they'll make fun of you.
Yeah. Well, I
or
think
they'll love it.
or they'll love it. And you're also modeling self-care for them. I think a
Yes.
lot of times in today's society or in teaching, we're just expected to like be perfect and be on all the time. And that is so not relatable. Like kids being able to see you have a hard day and not mask it is teaching them a
Yes.
lesson too. So
Yeah.
that's important. And
Yeah.
that it's okay to be tired and like have a
Yeah.
low key moment, you know?
Yeah.
So just good
Yeah.
life advice, man. Not even for teaching or advising, just life in general. Take care of yourself, which
Yeah.
is luckily that is kind of a trend also, which it shouldn't be something that's trendy, but I
I
think that's on the
know.
rise. Like I even just going to therapy, I think as an adult, I grew up in a society where that was you only go to therapy if things are wrong. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, everyone needs to go to therapy at some point in your life, and it's the best thing you could do for yourself. Which especially, you know, as an advisor that is burnt out, get yourself into therapy, I think. I mean, that's my advice.
Absolutely. Your benefits package covers it. Do it.
Yeah, do it.
I have video, like Zoom therapy every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And my students know I have Zoom therapy at 3 o'clock. And you know who taught me to talk about it? Was a student.
I love
She
that.
was like, Miss Bladen, I have to leave class right on time today. She was one of those who always stayed after.
Mhm.
She's like, I have to leave right on time today because I have Zoom therapy. And I was like, okay. And the next week I said, okay, I have to leave class right on time today
Yeah.
because I have Zoom therapy. And I think that part of helping dissipate the stigma is for us to be honest with each other
Mhm.
and also to hold that space. Like, I'm not telling them I have Zoom therapy just because I'm bragging or
No.
whatever. Who brags about being in therapy? But I'm also saying if you need something, you need to need it before 3 or after 4.
Right, right. And it's cool if you also need to go to therapy. You know, like it's just setting that
Yes.
example that, you
Yes.
know, it's not scary or bad and it's a part of life, you know, and it normalizes
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah.
okay, so we're wrapping things up. I have one more question for you, and it's kind of like all encompassing, but say that a new advisor calls you on the phone tomorrow and is like, I'm overwhelmed. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just got this job. What do I do? What do you tell them?
Uh, Sign up for JEA.
Yep. Agreed.
Join a chat, go to a conference, even if it's virtual.
Mm-hmm.
Find a buddy. You
Yeah.
know,
It
this
all
is
kind
this
of centers around a community.
it does. It absolutely does. Because that's what I was just gonna say, actually, is that there's only one yearbook advisor at your school, probably,
Probably.
right? Even football coaches have other football coaches at school to talk to, right? We are flying so low by definition. And so my best advice is to find other yearbook advisors that you can text with, call on your commute, send an email, send a meme, there's there's it's so easy to feel extremely isolated in this job. And not only are you probably the only yearbook advisor, you're probably the only person who's ever been a yearbook advisor at your school.
Right.
And the people who have been yearbook advisors are not going to tell you that they have that experience because they don't want to end up doing it again, right?
That's true.
Those of us who are lifers will be thrilled to talk to you. So I guess my advice is don't look at your school, look at other schools for help.
Yeah. And luckily, I mean, we live in an age now where it's easier than ever to connect with people. I think the Facebook groups have been so helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And, even videos like this, my goal is to get this information into, other advisors' hands. And if you're watching this and you want to chat with us, like we're just here, please reach out because you definitely are here for you. But with that though, you actually do consulting with other schools and stuff like that to teach leadership, and tell us more about how you help other schools and in districts and workshops and stuff.
Sure, sure, sure. Thank you for asking. So jenbladen.com is my website, and there are some resources there. There are some Jen Bladen resources at Organized Advisor and vice versa. But you know, I am more that, let me just say that this is how open to please ask me questions I am, that when a new advisor sends me a question, I have to organize my thoughts to say the answer. And that benefits me. Like, people feel like they're bothering us when they reach out, but you're actually helping us when
Oh,
you
for
reach out.
sure. Yeah, it gives me a list of content that I think is needed by not just you, but everyone else. So
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
ask us.
So
That's why in every email or every like post, I'm like, please, like everything that is ever requested, everything that we put out is requested by an advisor.
yes,
It might not be just, it might be just for that advisor, but guaranteed it's probably helping someone else too. So yeah,
exactly.
I love when people come to us and ask questions because I don't know everything. I wasn't an advisor for that long. Built a platform, but I can go find someone that has an answer. So
Exactly. Exactly. So, and that's the other thing, is you're helping build my network. When you reach out to me for help, you're helping me build my network. So
right.
bring it, bring it. I
Good,
want to
good.
hear. So that said, I teach yearbook workshops. I'll do Zoom. I'll come to you. I speak at JEA usually in the fall and in the spring. Um, yeah, so if you have a request, let me know. I've recently been doing my JEA content has been AP style focused because it's a pet peeve of mine. But whatever your pet peeve is, like, who, that's, ask me and I'll teach a workshop on it. So, and
Cool.
I often teach about leadership too.
I was going to say, what is your favorite thing to teach, or what would you say is your specialty if someone were to be needing a workshop session or something like that? Consultation.
Yeah. So I built my brand on the concept that scholastic journalism is leadership education. And so, if you are interested in teaching your students, I see journalistic yearbook as leadership, right? Gone are the days of joke captions and embarrassing photographs and all of that, because we are teaching our students to be leaders, that every photo choice they make, every caption choice they make is a leadership call. And so if that's something you're interested in, I'm your person.
So
Yeah.
jenbladen.com is where people can go to learn more about you. And then I'll get in
Yes.
touch with you as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for sharing all of your wonderful advice and insight with us. I know that advisors will be so like thankful for everything and probably reach out because they will have more questions. So I'll definitely put the link to her website in the
Please.
description box below. Feel free to comment on this video if you have specific questions or if you have other topics that we can help you with future advisor interviews. And we also might have Jen back, for a little update if we get some more questions because she's full of knowledge and wisdom, and we'd love to have that shared with you guys. So thank you guys so much
Awesome.
for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.